maybe no big surprise today from Barcelona, but what were some of your big takeaways from that last preseason friendly game over in Asia?
We can expect more fireworks from this Barcelona team all season. One of the best attacking teams in Europe. The interchange that we see from them is so Barcelona-coded. I think we're going to see another big season from Lamine Yamal. I'm just really interested to see how they defend this year. They have one of the highest lines in Europe. We're not going to really see Daegu take advantage of that, even though they did have a couple of opportunities. But it's a big season for them, especially defensively, I think.
What did you think, Tone? We saw a lot of different Barcelona players in the mix in this match today.
Yeah, we saw in the first half, right? We're going to get a lot of the same from Hansi Flick's side, right? Aaron mentions the high line, but in that attacking third, there's so much fun to watch. The movement is incredible. The play in tight areas is really incredible. That's a credit to the technical ability of this group, and they're not afraid to play youngsters in the group. We see that all, from Hansi Flick over the year and now the start of his second season. So I think we're going to see a more refined Barcelona where they say, this is us. Like we saw them get beat in the end by Inter in the Champions League semifinals. This is how we play. Yes, we're going to play with a high line. We're going to get better at it. We're going to refine it. We're going to make sure that we keep trapping you in offside positions, because that means that they don't run 50 yards back and then run 50 yards forward. They squeeze you in the midfield. And they're unapologetic about the way that they want to go about their game.
Correct. I don't think we're going to learn anything from Barcelona beating the last place team in the K-League 5-0, right? That's the reality of the situation. It was a no contest today. Almost expected. We did get to see a lot of kids that we don't normally see, like Pedro Fernandez. I really liked him in the 45 minutes that he showed. Clearly, like you said, I really like what you said, Barcelona coded. A kid that has a lot of good technique, a good understanding of the game. It's the tweaks, right? Of how do you make something that was already excellent last season even better? And how are you going to make that sustainable when teams already know what to expect, right? Because teams are going to adapt. They're going to be better playing against Barcelona because they know what this Hansi Flick side is going to bring to the table. So how do you improve off of that and make yourself even better, like the evolution, right? We want to see phase 2. But look at these stats. I mean they blew Daegu out of the water.
29 shots, 16 on target. And even though it didn't register as a shot on target because it went over the bar, Daegu really did have that excellent opportunity in the first half. It would have just felt good for them to get at least one pass. This Barcelona team who really had their way with Daegu today. And we did see two different lineups, really. The entire first half group was changed over in the second half. So let's start with the first half, boys. What was our big takeaway from the group we saw in that first 45 minutes? Nico, I'll start with you.
It was more the same. More than anything, I'm looking at the things that I didn't know from Barcelona, including like a couple of 17-year-olds, right? Pedro Fernandez, he had a couple of really interesting combinations with Lamine Yamal, heel flicks, one-time touches, finding himself in those half spaces, almost in tighter spaces, really. And then, they did their thing, Barcelona, right? You expected them to score a lot. But it is what it is. They scored 3 goals in the first half. Very prolific in this Asian tour.
Yeah, and of the 23 players that played, by my count here, 6 of those were teenagers today. So over 25% of this group were teenagers that got on the field. So, yeah, Fernandez was the story in this starting lineup, playing in that number 10 position. Movement looked really good. Possession looked really good. Confidence on the ball. Of course, when they're that deep, he gets an opportunity to float around and find some spaces. But again, first look that we've seen from him comes from the youth team, starting at the U15s through the 19s, and now with the first team. And another 17-year-old, Aaron, that gets an opportunity here. It's amazing what they do.
Yeah, they're starting all these youth players that is, like I said before, Barcelona coded. They trust their young players. The biggest thing I was looking for from this match, though, was something I probably wasn't going to get out of it. How do they defend? How do they cope with teams running in behind their back line? They did give up a number of chances, did Barcelona. Daegu could have taken advantage if they were a little bit sharper, if they had a little bit more quality. Gerard Martin, Ronald Araujo, I don't know what his future is with this Barcelona team. There's been talk about him maybe leaving. And center back is probably their biggest question for me. They've had so many injuries, so many players kind of coming in and out, young players stepping in. So I think that's the most important pillar for them this season is how they stay healthy and how they play through the center back.
Yeah, if they can balance that just insane offensive production with even just slightly better numbers defensively, it's hard to imagine this team not being one of the favorites to complete the European treble, even though they did win the domestic treble last season. I'm curious, do you all think that this team is in a better position this year with this squad than they were last year, Nico?
If they can register their players, yes.
Well, that is the big question.
They can register them in Champions League.
Yeah, they can. La Liga. I mean, seriously, though, right? It's every summer we're having this conversation about Barcelona trying to register their players. And if they do, remember, Dani Olmo, for example, didn't get registered until, second, third match day in La Liga last year. We could possibly end up seeing the same. Perhaps not. Let's see how Laporta juggles this situation. But yes, they've refined themselves a little bit from a squad perspective. I don't know if they're a better team. I don't know if they're necessarily better. We'll see when La Liga starts again, when they're playing actual competitive games. But Barcelona is expected to compete in every single tournament, and these came so agonizingly close.
And they've got a Lamine Yamal who's a year older, hopefully a bit more mature.
Yeah,
I think he's at least
18,
more mature on the football pitch. We don't have to talk about the off-field stuff, but I do believe he's more mature on the football pitch. Taking that number 10 shirt shows to me a level of wanting to step up to the plate for him. I hope he does on the pitch. I hope he does off the pitch as well. But he's still a teenager. He is a kid, a literal kid who's got the weight of Barcelona on his shoulders. We'll see if this year where he has the real expectation, if he can step up.
It feels like we do got to talk a little bit about the off-field stuff because we see a number of times how the off-field lives of players really does trickle into their on-field performances. We haven't seen that quite yet with Lamine Yamal, but
until it does.
Not a story.
You kind of got to let it slide, right? It's an 18-year-old. Like, Ronaldinho was doing his thing when he was at Barcelona, but he was Ronaldinho. When we see Lamine Yamal's form dip, then we can question it. But who am I to say anything about his private life? Do I have certain feelings of where I think he can go? Yes, but I'm not going to comment on that.
You're not going to go the Adil Rami route and just criticize his entire life?
Right, but I'm not going to go that route until the football drops, and hopefully the football doesn't drop, right? Hopefully he is one of those players that if he wants to have an extravagant life, he can have that while being an extraordinary football player. Like, I'm not going to dip my toes into that conversation because I'm yet to see the end product of it all on the field. It was because of one party and certain factors that we think are pushing him towards a path that we might not think is suitable for him. We don't know.
Yeah, it's so amazing to me still, though. We're 3 years into pulling levers, not registering players before the season, finding a manager in Hansi Flick that nobody thought was the right guy except guys in Barcelona, but everyone from the outside looking in said, how are you bringing this guy? This is not the guy we need right now. He doesn't play Barcelona football, and they're still doing the things that they're doing. It's amazing to me because there's a lot of clubs that would have capitulated by now, right, with all of the problems. And just think, Dani Olmo, a guy who was so important to you, almost didn't play last year, and somehow, after all of that, they get him in a position where he's a stud, right, for this team. So, and they're going through it again, and you just wonder, like...
Twice, right?
Right. You're like, does this catch up with you at some point? It didn't last year. You hope it doesn't this year, but it's certainly a storyline.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Tone. For all the administrative problems that Barcelona have, because it looks like a flaming dumpster fire, it is a stark contrast to what we see on the field. And... I don't know how that happens because usually there's a trickle-down effect. I mean, you'll tell me, in most clubs around the world, if institutionally it's chaos, it'll affect what's going on the field. But at Barcelona, somehow it's almost like it's like a separation of church and state, right?
Well, you know, another player that's hoping to get registered is Marcus Rashford, who is feeling hopeful that Barcelona will find the funds to get him playing in La Liga this upcoming season.
We are knocking on the door of the Barcelona 2025-2026 season, taking a look at last campaign. La Liga champions, Supercopa champions, Copa del Rey champions, going agonizingly short in that Champions League, losing to Inter. Barcelona wants to do their thing. And they've signed a couple of players, including Joan Garcia from Espanyol, Marcus Rashford on loan from Manchester United, and Rooney Bargy from FC Copenhagen. Have let go of a couple of players, but they're trying to reinforce and evolve from what we saw last year. And on that note, we're going to do Barcelona's summer check-in here on Morning Footy. Alongside Aaron West, Tony Meola, I'm Nico Cantor, ready to walk you through everything that we think might happen for Barcelona this season. And what we want to see, gentlemen, is that next step for Hansi Flick. So now, with the expectations on their shoulders, because let's remember a year ago, the conversations we were having, I don't think we had too high expectations for Barcelona, and they proved us all wrong because they played really well. So what do we think is happening in this season too?
And going back to last year, they got better as the season went on, right? Which is a product of some of the younger players getting some experience. Lewandowski coming back into the lineup. He was injured early in the season. Hansi Flick kind of growing into this roster, knowing what his substitution patterns look like. I think for me, I still can't get out of my head the semifinal against Inter.
Yeah.
And in a position, look, we applauded Barcelona all year last year. So there's two ways to close out games when you have them, right? You either sit back and you defend and you lock the shop up a little bit, or you, when you're up 2-0, you make it 3-0 and 4-0, right? So all season we applauded them for making it 3-0 and 4-0 because that's how they closed out games. But of course, this bit them a little bit in that semifinal in the last couple minutes of that game. So I guess what I'm looking for this year in the moments, Aaron, where they're in those positions, how does Hansi Flick adjust? Today wasn't a great example, right? Today was a training session, right? Work on things and get some guys in the game. But how do they adjust in those moments? And that'll be, I think, the telltale sign if they put that fourth trophy now in the cabinet.
We're probably never going to see them play a deep block, but can they adjust to face their opponents? The substitution patterns is a really important thing. I think adding Marcus Rashford, Rooney Bargy, they have players to spell Rafinha. They have players to spell Lamine Yamal if he's not having a good match. Now they've got not to say Ter Stegen and Szczesny aren't world-class keepers at this point in time. Joan Garcia is, I think, a world-class goalkeeper and can be world-class in the future. They've addressed some of the depth issues. Now I think it's tactical and how they manage games, just like you said.
Yeah, I'll add another wrinkle to all of these questions that we had about Barcelona because there are not that many. Yeah. There are a couple of symptoms to how they got beat in that tie against Inter. I think it's very evident towards the end of the game, but at the very beginning of the tie, they conceded like a minute in, right? We questioned how effective or how sustainable this way of playing would be in one-off games. When the margin of error isn't an entire league campaign, when it's one tie against Inter in a semifinal and they switched off, right? It was a way that you say, a way of playing that you got to say, listen, Barcelona needs to be on it at all times. And if you start a match and you're not switched on like they weren't against Inter, it'll do you in. And I think that tie, the tone was set within the first 30, 40 seconds when they conceded. So it's those small tweaks. How do you allow yourself, maybe not even from a coaching perspective, from a player perspective, how do you allow yourself not to turn off in those moments? Yeah,
and it's so hard. And we were almost begging for them to do it in a Champions League semifinal, where at that point, if my math is right, they were 50-plus games into doing it the other way. Right? And being successful the other way. Now we're asking them in a semifinal to all of a sudden switch the gear a little bit and make a change. So is it sitting back? Is it maybe in a moment where you take the ball? You remember, I think it was Yamal late in that game where he has an opportunity to go to the corner with the ball.
And he shoots and he hits the crossbar.
That's right. And now all of a sudden, you're thinking to yourself, well, if you take the ball in the corner and you kill a couple seconds here, maybe you close the game. But so maybe it's tweaks like that, just game management.
Look what we're talking about. We're talking about moments. Usually when we do like a post-mortem of a season, we're looking at trends that, that worked so poorly for that team. We're talking about literal like, he should have dribbled to the corner instead of shooting type of questions, right? Indicating that Barcelona, for the 98, 99% of the season, they did things absolutely right. One guy that's going to have even more weight on his shoulders is Lamine Yamal, because he had his breakout season and now he's having number 10 put on his back.
And the fact that I think he has players behind him in Bardghji, Rooney, who can give him a little bit of a break during the season. Flick doesn't have to lean on him the entire year. He can have little dips of form, but I think the comfort and the security of having other players will lead him to have a better season. I think he'll have a better season than last year.
What about Marcus Rashford? This is a big season for him. Like we said at the top of the segment, it seems like Marcus Rashford needs Barcelona more than Barcelona needs Marcus Rashford.
Yeah, that was your statement, right?
Yeah, it was.
I think, well, I go back to Deco, and remember when they were courting Nico Williams for a little while, and he said, the only wide players we have are Rafinha and Yamal, right? I'm thinking, okay, those are the only two that you have to deal with. So I think what he does is offer some depth. Bardghji on the right-hand side. I think Marcus Rashford on the left-hand side. We saw today he played in that number 9 role, albeit different than it would be at Manchester United. But if you remember, he was none too happy about playing as the 9 at Manchester United, right, under Erik ten Hag. So, one, he has to settle in, right? It's Barcelona. It's a massive club. They play a little bit differently. Today, the finish we saw today, albeit against a side that's not very competitive against them, that's a very Marcus Rashford type finish. So I think he can spell all 3 guys up top. And that gives Barcelona that depth you were talking about a little bit earlier, part of that depth, right? And he's a guy with the experience. I don't think he's going to be at all at playing at Barcelona because he did play at one of the biggest clubs in the world. So I don't think there's that type of settling in period, Nico. But I think he offers cover in all 3 of those spots. And I think he also offers, if they play 50 games, he also offers 15 starts along the way, right? And 15, 20 starts. Most people will say, well, look, it's Marcus Rashford. He should be starting in any club that he goes to. But he came to one of the most attack-minded clubs in all of world football, right? He's going to have to pull back a little bit, maybe, I think, on the expectations until he settles in. Now, if he goes and he starts scoring like a madman, then they got to figure something else out.
Yeah. I mean, and then you have a guy like Rooney Bardghji who's come in. They actually registered him through the youth system, so he's
young enough to do
He's going to be registered on the first team so far. That's all we know. But listen, he's a guy that's coming back from a massive injury. He kind of burst onto that scene as a super sub for that Copenhagen team that made it out of that group in the Champions League from a couple seasons ago with Bayern, Manchester United, and Galatasaray. They weren't expected to. And he was pretty impressive, almost like a Lamine Yamal type, proportionally speaking, on that right-hand side. So you kind of expect him to get going, right, in this season, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that I don't think we'll see too much from him this season. I think it'll be in cup matches, cameo appearances at the end of games. I want to go back to Rashford, though. I think that this is a season for him where he can really seize the opportunity. He's going to get minutes in a lot of these games. He's going to play in different areas. I think that he will be comfortable playing as a 9 for this team because it's a very different prospect as playing as a 9 for Manchester United. Yeah. It's way more fluid. He's going to get the ball more. He's going to get the opportunity and freedom to be Marcus Rashford rather than just kind of being stuck up, chasing and pressing and not really getting the ball. So for me, I do think this will be a really big season for Rashford. I think he's built for this as well. And I think the smile that you see on his face is different than anything we've seen in a long time from Marcus Rashford. And I think that's huge.